Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at NECA's SDCC exclusive Superman vs. the Alien 2-pack. And this is one that people are very excited about because we have NECA's take on a Superman figure, this is good. I think the more competition across the industry, the better. Yeah, I know it's not technically in scale with the ones that we'd want it to be in scale for competition purposes because it's 7 inches and it only lines up with DC Direct or Diamond or whoever else, but you still have a company making good figures of a certain property. It's going to make the other companies making those same figures or those same properties want to do better, ideally. So this is a good thing all in all, and this ended up being a pretty cool 2-pack. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. Okay, we're going to get both of these figures done all in one review, so we're going to move kind of quickly for the Alien because he's a lot less interesting to talk about. He stands like roughly 24 centimeters with this amount of hunch and bend. Of course, you could make him taller, but that's probably your average height. It's going to make him just about 9.5 inches. Definitely has a lot of height to him, and I do believe these are all reused parts. Now, I'm not a xenomorph expert. I can't say for sure. I don't necessarily recognize the abdominal section, but I'm pretty sure the feet are, if I had to guess, I'd say they're big chap feet, and then the rest is maybe Alien 4, which isn't out yet. I can't tell. I don't know, but they look like parts that I've seen before, although I haven't seen those before. Anyway, you get the idea. It's nothing special, but it does have a cool paint job. It's got kind of like this periwinkle purple dry brush on top of most of the body, and then we do also have this kind of tannish goldish color to play off of that, and then we have the very purple carapace on the top of the head. Very nicely done, love that. And we have the silver teeth and claws. So it's your standard Xeno from NECA. Nothing that's really going to stand out aside from the color scheme, so that's pretty cool. But as far as the figure goes, it's pretty basic. And so let's go ahead and rate the aesthetic at an 8. I think it looks really good with this particular color combination. Though I have to say, he has very severe knock knees from the packaging, and I haven't had any luck getting those to straighten out, so I'm a little concerned about that. But hopefully, with a little bit of heat, those will straighten out. Alright, for the accessories, 0. He has 0 accessories, 0 out of 10. For the articulation, the head is on a swivel. Actually, I guess it's a ball peg connected to a hinge. So I thought it was just a swivel, but we do have a hinge in there, and apparently it is on top of a ball peg as well. Or it's just a messed up peg. I can't say for sure. I don't want to risk breaking it. But it gives you just a little bit of lean, but you do get full rotation, and of course you can lean it forward and back pretty far. And that's mostly on the ball peg. It's kind of a stiff hinge, but you do get really good range, so that's good. The jaw is hinging as usual. The inner jaw does function as usual. Like I said, nothing really groundbreaking here. Shoulders are swivel hinges, better than horizontal. Full rotation, nothing special there. Double jointed elbows, rotation at the top and at the bottom. Full range, 180 basically. Wrists have a swivel and a hinge. Fingers have a hinge. Diaphragm joint, is it one of the good ones? It's a double ball peg on this one. Maybe this is from number 4. Is this one of the dog alien? I don't know. Honestly, I cannot remember. But whatever. Doesn't really matter, I suppose. Does have good range, though. Side to side could be better, but it's not terrible. Full rotation. Hips are on ball hinges. Obviously, the big pads right here get in the way. But they are pretty loose also, forward and back. And they connect again. So that's a thing. Hinging is pretty good, and the hip flaps do flex, so you can get pretty good range out of those hips that way. Going forward, you do get pretty good range still, even though it's a little bit loose. Going back, of course, you can go all the way. Thigh swivel is in there, so that's good. You have a swivel hinge for the top of the knee, regular hinge for the bottom, so really good range that way. It rotates if you want. For this joint, we have another swivel hinge. We can get about 90 going that way, and then it does straighten out, and it will rotate. A lot of these swivel hinges are the wrong way, though. To be functional, you would want it to swivel before the hinge, not after, because having it swivel like this doesn't accomplish anything. And then you have a ball peg for the ankle, which is garbage. It doesn't function at all. So the legs on this guy are kind of terrible, with those big goofy feet, and I'm guessing they're necessary for this one to be accurate, but it just doesn't help the figure at all. So his feet kind of blow. His tail is bendy and does rotate. I do like the tail. I don't know, articulation on this guy's not great, but it's relatively standard for a xenomorph. Upper body's pretty good, lower body's a 7. I'll give it a 7 for the articulation. Final verdict on the xenomorph itself, I'm gonna give it an overall 7. It looks cool with the color scheme, but the lower legs are terrible. The rest is pretty good. Okay, moving on to Superman, the more interesting of the two things, which is interesting because I don't think Superman's ever been categorized like that before. He has never been the more interesting of any two things ever. And I just pissed off all of the Superman fans, but hopefully you guys can appreciate a little bit of humor. Anyway, he stands at just about 7¼ inches, which makes him pretty close to 18½ centimeters. And we don't typically get really good sculpts for our superhero figures these days, and is this one? It's mostly really good. Whoever sculpted this clearly has a knack for sculpting anatomy. It's good. However, I feel like they didn't use reference while they were doing it, because we have some things which are just freaking weird. A couple things which are really weird. One being the upper abdominal section. There's no separation there. It's just one long abdominal section. That's very weird. And even with his torso forward a little bit, it's still kind of a weird abdominal section. Not terrible, but it's kind of weird. And then the other thing that's really weird, and most of you guys aren't going to notice this, but this is a review, and these are things I can talk about, and so I'm going to. The anatomy for his chest is good from here down. Like, that's a very nice chest anatomy. Until you get up here toward the collarbone, the clavicle, where the pectoral muscles connect up here. The collarbone goes out and like that. And it goes up. It's like an upside down V, or it's basically just a V shape. Their clavicle starts way high up, like all the way up, and then it kind of bows out. It comes down actually to where the shoulder is, or where it would be anyway. So you have this really weird, exaggerated pectoral shape up by the top of the neck, which isn't super obvious if you don't know anything about anatomy, and so most of you aren't going to care. I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as just typical. I mean, most people haven't studied anatomy. But it is something that's really strange. Like, it's a really good sculpt, with a few very questionable choices. Otherwise, it's pretty good. Okay, other things to note for the aesthetics. They did shade the blue. Now, they used a very vibrant, almost purpley blue to do that. And typically speaking, you don't do that. When you're shading cool colors, you want to go darker and less saturated. Their shading is more saturated than the blue that they're shading, so that's a little strange. So for this, you would expect a cooler blue, not a warmer blue, and theirs is purpley, so it's kind of strange looking. I don't hate it, but it's kind of strange looking. It's an odd choice to shade blue with that purpley color. It's like a very royal purple blue, so that's a little odd, but it still looks pretty cool. The S is painted very nicely, the belt is painted well enough, the boots are all molded. Okay, the neck area is not painted as well as I would prefer, but it's not terrible, so it's not like it's gonna be a deal breaker by any means. That's okay. And the cape is inserted pretty nicely as well. For this scale especially, I think that's pretty good. They used a nice material. They did a good job with the S logo. I'm pleased with that. The face sculpt, I think, is pretty good. His irises are very large, but it's not a problem really. I like it. The hair is a separate piece on the front, and mine is not glued quite right, but I can just adjust that myself. I shouldn't have to, but that's not a deal breaker. It's just my bad luck with quality control. I cannot get good quality control to save my life. In fact, my cape has a mistake on it too. See that stitch? There's like a screwed up stitch going all the way down right there. They said they'd replace it if I sent it in, so that's good, but whatever. So the aesthetics on this guy, pretty good overall. One last thing though, and this looks like it's just a universal thing, because I looked at some other ones. His torso, you guys can probably see this, his hips are going this way, and then his torso's connected this way. There's some disconnect here, and it's not like it's a ball peg to adjust. At least, as far as I can tell, I can't make it any better. His torso and his hips don't align. You guys see what I'm talking about? See how far this one is underneath this blue area? And then this one is farther out from the blue area? There's something weird going on there in the assembly process. But all of those things considered, it's still gorgeous. It still looks really, really good. I still really like it. So aesthetically, I'm going to give it a 7. And then as far as accessories go, we have two heads. We have the normal head, and then we got his laser beam vision eyes. So we have a short one, and it looks good enough. I'm not in love with this accessory, but I think it's okay. It just looks a little weird having the solid red thing between the two eyes, you know? A little bit strange. And then we do have a really big one, which looks like it's hitting somebody in the chest or something like that, which also looks pretty good, and also kind of weird at the same time. I'm not in love with it, and it's actuality, but I'm in love with the concept, and I commend them for doing something like that. So that's pretty cool. And then we have the 2 fist hands that come out in the package and 2 karate chop hands. So accessory-wise, I'll give them a 7. It's okay. It's pretty good. And now it's time for the articulation. Head is on, could be a double, feels like a single, but you get really good range. Side to side is good. Looking up is not the most. You can't really look up that far. Looks down well enough. And that's, of course, you have your rotation, so that's okay. Shoulders, horizontal, well, that's pretty good. Full rotation. Nice big shoulder joint, by the way, that's good. Bicep swivel is pretty good, though the biceps are backwards, kind of, at least on this side. The biceps insert in, underneath the shoulder muscle. They insert in. This one's inserting out. It should not be curving that way. You see what I'm talking about? You see how it's taller here than here? That's kind of weird. This one doesn't do it as much, but this one does. So that's a little bit odd. Again, it's an anatomy thing most people aren't going to notice, but this is a review, so I have to mention it. As for the double jointed elbow, oh, it's really stiff. That's what she said, but it works pretty well. Also, what she said. Pretty good double jointed elbow there. Wrist swivel and hinge, that's fine. Ab crunch, I already showed you. It's questionable. I mean, it does lean back, but the sculpt is definitely questionable. It looks more like a lower back right there. Same thing as Batman. Pretty sure Batman's going to have the exact same body, so we'll see. Leaning forward, it works pretty well. That's a pretty good ab crunch going forward. Not the best looking in the back, but it definitely could be worse. They did a good job on the back anatomy. Pretty nice. I like that. And then the waist twist. It does work, but it does accentuate the fact that the hips are not aligned with the waist. Very strange situation there. I bought another one, and it has the same issue. So, whatever. I guess that's just the way it's going to be. It's not super obvious. It's not like it's a total deal breaker, but it's definitely strange how offset that is. Alright, trunks are flexible, so you can bring the legs pretty far up. Like, that's not really an issue at all. Going back is fine, but the butt will flex, and then going out to the side, full on splits, no problem at all. The hips do catch each other, and they're loose when they do bow. As soon as you pose them, they're not loose anymore. I mean, they're loose together, but only just a little bit. So it's not too big of a deal. That's getting really annoying, though. I really wish NECA would stop doing that. Fix it. Fix it. It's only been happening for like ever. Thigh swivel is in there. Double jointed knee. Oh, I do want to point something else out that they did, which nobody else seems to be paying attention to in the action figure world anymore. This bone, the femur, is longer than the tibia, which is this bone. It's about an 80% to 100% ratio, okay? And they did that. The upper leg is longer than the lower leg. Nobody does that, especially Hasbro. They do it the opposite way, and it looks terrible. This looks great. I love that they made the upper leg longer. All right, double jointed knee. Uh-oh. Well, I unpegged it. I pulled too hard and it separated the peg. I'll have to get some hot water and peg that together. Let's try this one. That's annoying. And that one worked just fine. So double jointed knee is fine. Camera. Double jointed knee is fine. Except when I tried to do this one, it pulled the peg right out. So that's definitely a little bit of an issue. Hopefully you guys don't have that happen. And then we do have a boot swivel. If you like a boot swivel, you'll be happy. Ankles go all the way back. That's nice. And not terribly far forward, but oh, there we go. Yeah, that's pretty far forward. I take it. I like it. That's pretty good. And we have a toe hinge, which is really stiff. I can't get it to go. Uh-oh, I can't get the toe hinges to work. Be very careful with those. And you do get an ankle rocker out of there, which is pretty steep, but you do get to rotate that if you wanted to, even though this doesn't look great. You get a pretty decent ankle rocker out of that swivel hinge. So, articulation-wise, we definitely had some hiccups there. Definitely had some issues. It's mostly functional, but also we have some issues. So I'm going to only give it a 7 out of 10. I like these figures in concept a lot. I mean, I like the idea that NECA is making comic-based figures and that the other companies need to kind of step up their game. But also, there's going to be some growing pains, and I expect that. So we'll see how it goes. So final verdict on this guy. We definitely have some issues. I think NECA will eventually be able to work those kind of things out, but as of right now, they haven't. So we have some weird anatomy issues, which I can't ignore. This is a review, remember. And we have some paint issues. And we got some articulation issues, but they're not very big issues, and the good things are also really good. So I think it's going to average down to about a 7 for this figure on its own. And then as a 2-pack, I'd say 8 overall. Not counting any QC issues that I may have found on mine, hoping that they aren't universal. I think it's an overall 8. I think NECA did a pretty good job. Again, there are definitely some weird issues going on with this body that I really hope are not universal, and there's no way for me to say, but they are definitely there, so I have to mention them. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't, well, that's okay too. If you haven't subscribed, you might want to consider it. I have new videos up just about every single day, and thousands of videos already on the channel, so make sure you come back for all of that, and in the meantime, keep collecting.